Well, tonight we are live from London, Malawi and Kenya. Welcome to StockBox Premiere. Well, hello and welcome to StockBox Premiere. Apologies for the late running of the broadcast this evening. There was some issues over on the YouTube live stream, so we are streaming on Twitter, X and LinkedIn. The recording will be on YouTube. So please, if you do have questions, head over to Twitter and send your questions to @StockBoxMedia. That's the best way. But joining us tonight on the panel for this Graphite special is Sapan Guy, the CCO of Sovereign Metals. That's the hashtag SVML, where we're talking about their Kasia Graphite project in Malawi. Darren Hazelwood, the CEO of Panther Metals, will be joining us as well. That's the ticker PALM. They'll be talking about their Awkward Graphite project on Abonga. And finally, Jason Brewer, the CEO of Marula Mining, with the ticker MARU, talking about their Nyori Graphite project in Tanzania. So the format, although we're a little bit late, would be a bit of a 10-minute interview with the guest first of all, then followed by the open Q&A for 15 minutes, and it's your chance to put your questions to the director speaking using the live chat. But in this instance, please do head over to Twitter to send us your questions. And if you're enjoying it, please do like or retweet the live stream this evening. And as always, the directors are bound by market rules, but they will do their very best to answer your questions as best they can. Well, thank you very much, Sapan, for joining us tonight, our first guest, the CCO of Sovereign Metals. Welcome onto StockBox. How are you doing?
Good, pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you very much for your time and for your patience as well. We're going to talk about the Kasia Graphite project in Malawi there. And I did say you're calling from Malawi, but it's a slightly less exotic place. It's Solihull. But, you know, we can't have it all. But, I mean, the project here is described as best in class, the world's largest rutile and graphite, as just a byproduct. And Sovereign is set to be the market leader in graphite mining. So, I mean, first of all, Sapan, if you could perhaps just introduce the project to our audience tonight and why you're so confidently saying it's the best in class and you're aiming to make Sovereign a world leader in graphite.
Yeah, thanks. So as Sovereign Metals, we have one objective, which is to develop the Kasia rutile graphite project in Malawi. It's a very unique deposit in that there is no other rutile and graphite project. Rutile deposit found in the last 70 or so years, and it's really the only one that we know that has a titanium feedstock in the form of rutile, but also a graphite byproduct. So I'm going to concentrate more on the graphite side of the investment case rather than the rutile side, which I think a lot of people are understanding a lot more these days. So what is Kasia? Kasia is basically a very shallow blanket style mineralization of rutile and about 18 million tons of contained rutile in the ground and 24 million tons of contained graphite. We call the graphite a byproduct because essentially we're mining Kasia for the rutile, but we end up with a very graphite heavy tailings or waste, for a better word, which we may as well process and get the graphite from. And I say may as well, but really PFS or pre-feasibility study that we completed in September last year really provided us with an understanding of where we would sit within the graphite ecosystem. And the reality is we would be the largest producer of graphite in the world. We'd be the lowest cost producer of graphite in the world. And that all being said, as I said, graphite is really just a byproduct of ours.
And I mean, you had the PFS done, didn't you, back in September last year? And I think it suggested you would be indeed the world's biggest graphite producer and indeed the world's lowest cost producer. I think I read somewhere that even if graphite dropped 75% now, you would still be profitable. Is that right?
Yeah, so look, our PFS numbers showed that we would be producing on average about 244,000 tons of graphite, which puts us at the pinnacle of the producer pyramid. And that's a steady state annual average over 25 years. Giving you an understanding of the size of Cassia, after those 25 years, we would still have 70% of the resource still within the ground. So we wouldn't have exhausted the graphite resource by any stretch of the imagination. On the cost side, we would be producing all product at $404 a ton. The graphite itself as a byproduct would be an incremental $182 a ton. Given that graphite prices, I think in Q4 23, specifically for the fines, which are the cheaper end of the market, were at around $490 a ton. You can see even then we had like a 270% margin had we been in production. That's notwithstanding all the macros that we're looking at and the forecasts on the graphite price. So really, we would be the lowest cost producer, and we would essentially be the last person standing, no matter what the graphite price did.
And I mean, the PFS demonstrates the economics here, does it, very well? Because I know obviously Rio Tinto are involved as well, so they must clearly like what they're seeing as well.
Yeah, look, Cassia is a tier one project, right? It's a multi-generational project. It's a one of its kind find. You can understand why the second largest mining company in the world has taken a 15% equity stake in us, gave us $40 million to get a DFS done on the project. They are the world's biggest titanium dioxide producer. So hence you can understand why the rutile is important. They have a battery minerals division. They've been doing some interesting things in lithium and within copper, and we are their only exposure to graphite, which obviously ends up within your lithium-ion batteries.
Yes, indeed. Well, we'll talk about that in a moment. I don't know if I can ask you sort of how long Sovereign has been working in this graphite space, the sort of the experience at the board level.
Yeah, so look, even though we're a rutile titanium company at the heart, we actually started off as a graphite explorer. The original team that were on the ground in Malawi back in 2012, searching for graphite, did a lot of work understanding Malawian graphite and a lot of deposits of both hard rock, soft rock, saprolite type of graphite. That all culminated in actually a small graphite project called the Malingundi Graphite Project, which we've now hived off and that's a separate business. But what it gives us is a lot of insight, a lot of intel into the graphite markets, both upstream, downstream, an understanding of what the lithium-ion battery space is looking for graphite. A lot of people don't understand that the requirements for graphite within the battery really start in the development of the mine itself. If you don't get that right, you're not going to get your graphite qualified and in a battery, which ends up in an electric vehicle. We had been doing that work in 2016-17, when electric vehicles were a thing of the future and no one really wanted to move away from your typical ICE vehicles. But as you well know, things are changing, whether that's consumer driven, policy driven, regulations. It's all changing.
That's good to hear, Satpam. And of course, Rio does hold a significant chunk of the company at 15% there, and I believe they've also agreed to help progress the project forward through the connections, obviously, that they have as such a big operating company there. How critical are Rio to the successful outcome at the project here for Sovereign, and also partnerships between graphite producers and end users? I mean, are they critical? Could you carry on without them? Are they looking to get more involved? What's the situation with Rio?
So it's important to understand that this isn't a joint venture. This is still a very much Sovereign's gig. Sovereign Metals is developing Cassia. and we're moving it forwards through all the milestones through to production. Rio Tinto have come on board as an equity investor, but as part of their equity investment, they are giving us all the IP, all the intellectual property, all the technical know-how, all the experience of building out and producing minerals from tier 1 deposits. And that's through vehicles like a technical committee, for example, that's made up of both sovereign and Rio Tinto members that looks after where the DFS will ultimately end up. But essentially, this is very much a sovereign project. Having said that, it's very hard these days for a mining company to really get to understand where their product ends up the chain to specifically at the end user level. We'll know who our customers are, but we may not know who our customers' customers are and who our customers' customers' customers are. But that's something that, a Rio Tinto, lives and breathes within their own kind of supply chain and value chain understanding. Rio's own customers include the likes of Ford, Volvo, BMW. These are guys who, Sovereign Metals, ASX listed, AIM listed, explorer, developer, may find it hard to knock on the right doors in these companies, but with a Rio Tinto, we don't need to worry about that.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Sapan. So I'd like to open to the floor here. There was some sent to us in advance, and as I said, because we're not streaming on YouTube this evening, if people would like to ask their questions, probably the best way to do it is either email us at info@stockboxmedia.com or go to the @stockboxmedia Twitter page, or X page as it's now known, and the live stream is running there, and you can make a comment there and we'll get those questions asked. Now, one of the questions that came in was, how does Rio fit into your strategy? But we've definitely covered that point. So I'll go on to the next one here. Your graphite ore body also hosts the largest, highest grade rutile deposit on the planet, as you mentioned earlier. Is this a problem? The question is.
It's an absolute advantage. I mean, if you look at us as a graphite play, we are eminently financeable because we have a rutile value chain. Mm-hmm. If you look at us as a rutile play, we have a hedge against variable rutile prices with the graphite. Ultimately, the way to look at Cassia is you're getting a 2-for-1 here. You're getting the world's largest rutile deposit, 18 million tons of rutile in the ground. The next largest one is 4 or 5 million tons, so head and shoulders above any of our competitors. Within the same ore body, you're getting the graphite, and the graphite, just because of the size of Cassia, is the second largest graphite deposit in the world. So whether you look at us as a rutile play or a graphite play, it doesn't matter. We're looking at cornering the market in both.
Right. Okay. And the second question that I had is similar, following on from this, is how do you separate the two elements to commercialize them? How tricky is that?
Yeah, very easy. Both the rutile and the graphite flakes and the rutile crystals are essentially already liberated. They sit in the ground, mixed up with soil and rock and everything else that really, we don't commercially want to mine. All we need to do is use gravity separation to separate the two. In fact, if you go on our Twitter or X account, you'll see some videos where we've shown how this is done on a very simple shaking table, for example. Which shaking table is a bench level test of what spirals within a normalized conventional processing flow sheet would do. And what it does is it uses water to separate minerals from tailings, from any unwanted streams. Now, rutile is very heavy. It's a heavy mineral. Graphite is very light. So what happens is when you put these across a shaking table, or you'd put them ultimately through a spiral, is the rutile sits as the heavy mineral and falls to one side, and the graphite comes off on the other side. An analogy I used the other day was I was watching my 2-year-old, who I was trying to get to eat a salad. And he loves green peppers and he loves sweet corn. But I mixed it in with tomatoes, cucumbers, lettuce, etc. What did he do? Picked out the sweet corn, picked out the green peppers, and left the rest. I looked at him and I thought, you know what? That's quite a good analogy of how we're going to take out the rutile and graphite from Cassia.
Okay, good. Nice analogy, Sapan, there. And will you be sticking strictly to the Cassia project going forward, or you've got other projects that you're looking at potentially as well?
No, look, our management team is fully focused on Cassia. You would have seen that we've grown our management team significantly since the Rio Tinto deal and since the PFS. We now have, a couple of centuries worth of geological, mineralogical, metallurgical, processing, building, financing, construction, development, sales, the whole gamut of what it requires to really build a tier one project into a real business. We have that now within ourselves, all the experience that comes from individuals who've worked at BHP, Rio, Samsung, Lonmin, Norilsk, Lionor, all these tier one places.
Excellent. Well, the only other question that I have, unless any have come in, which I'll check in a moment, was what sort of graphite flakes do you have, as it's the large or the jumbo ones, as they're known, that are desired for the EV and the battery industry?
Well, so the easiest way to think of flake size distribution is you have your jumbo, you have your middle or your large, and you have your fines. We're pretty much kind of 30% jumbo, 30% in the middle, and about 40% in the middle and fines. And actually, it's the middle to fines that are used in anode making now. The nice thing that we have is because we're so low cost, the incremental cost of turning those jumbos into middles, if they were required for the anode battery space, would be such a small cost to us. We could do that quite happily and still make a margin at even today's prices.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Sapan. I'm just going to see if there are any other questions that have come in. I don't think there are, but I can have a quick check here. No, I think we're all good. So thank you very much, Sapan, for your time. If you can hang around for an hour or so, we'll come back and do the roundtable discussion with everyone on graphite. But for now, thank you, Sapan. Thank you for talking to us about the project.
Thanks. Look forward to the discussion.
Well, that was Sapan Guy there of Sovereign Metals. So I would now like to welcome our next guest. That is Darren Hazelwood from Panther Metals. And just looking here in the studio, it actually looks like Darren might be there, but I can't actually see him. Maybe he needs... Oh, there he is. Darren's just appeared. So I will welcome Darren Hazelwood. How are you, Darren?
I'm very well, Mark. Yourself?
I'm very good. Thank you, Darren. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to be talking about the awkward graphite project. Hopefully it's not as awkward as the name implies. But of course, it's on a bonga, which was originally being explored for that VMS-style nickel, copper and PGEs, wasn't it? But you've recently identified the potential for graphite. So I wonder if you could perhaps just introduce the project and perhaps just provide a little bit of context as to where the graphite element has come from.
Yeah, so we announced in September. Ooh, that was a drilling program. So we announced an initial discovery in the early part of 2023, where we basically took a representative sample of over 2.65 meters of graphitic looking material from a core, from a hole that we drilled into the sediments. Now, this was only the second hole that's ever been drilled into the sediments in that area. And post the results we got, we reviewed the historic hole from the 60s, and that confirmed graphitic material within that hole. However, that wasn't assayed. But so we had 2.65 meters, which we announced was part of a larger section. And in the autumn of last year, we got the remainder of that section assayed, and it come back with a really pleasing result for one hole. And in fact, to the extent that that hole made the highest graphite intercepts globally for the first quarter of 2024, and that come out a touch over 27 meters, grading 2.25% graphite. And the whole time we've been reviewing the historic reports from the surrounding area, and we was able, via those reports, we were able to define a target, an exploration target area of circa 21 square kilometers now. And the reason behind that is that we reviewed historic reports, and time after time graphite was being mentioned. And what people have to appreciate is that it's only been in the last 10 years really that graphite has become a commodity that people are chasing, people are looking for. And so people stepping over it, but purely just the fact that people were mentioning it within geological reports over the course of circa 50 years is exceptionally encouraging, to the extent that one of the reports talks about graphite being abundant. Now, the area that we drilled, we've got 3 conductors that they run parallel with each other. We had some work done by a guy called Sean Walker in 2021, and he identified that the conductors within that area were either graphitic or they were sulfides. And what our drilling did, we were targeting an anomaly and that anomaly happened to be within the sediments. So we drilled into that, and as I alluded to already, we made the graphite discovery. It goes from about 8 meters from surface, but all indications are that it's also abundant at surface, and that's going to be the first part of our exploration, is to get out there and confirm that this graphite is at surface. It is over an area, and as I say, the target exploration area at this point is 21 square kilometers. It's a huge area, and once we can do that, once we identify that the graphite is there, and then we'll move on to the next stages. But at this stage, it's very encouraging. We've got a huge number of conductors within a very defined area, and as I say, the indication are that they're graphitic, and for a company of Panther size, it's an extraordinary opportunity.
Excellent. And why was it not exploited before, Darren? Was it just not that graphite was very interesting to the world?
Yeah, simply that. Now, in this particular area, people have been exploring for copper and nickel, and in fact, that's what we were doing, and platinum and palladium. I hasten to add, and that's exactly what we were looking for. We were drilling to target the outer edges of conduit, and that's where the discovery was made. And actually, that's why there was only one hole into the sediments. We weren't targeting the sediments. We were targeting the conductors and the anomaly that was in there, and that's exploration, Mark. It's how these things develop. Indeed
it is. Well, it's good to see that graphite is, of course, in the focus of many the industry now, the battery metals industry, of course. I mean, what stage are you at with this project then? I mean, it's obviously quite early stage if you're just sort of now going to explore on the graphite potential, but how are you going to get going as a starter for 10, let's say?
Well, look, we've effectively already got this work program in hand. We're receiving weekly reports from the area, and once those reports confirm that the snow melt has concluded, we'll be getting boots on the ground, and that program will only be around a week. We'll have teams going in there. They'll go to the historic sites. They'll confirm what is in the historic reports, and once they've done that, that'll now enable us to define the area that we're targeting, and then we simply go to work. We've announced to the market that we've got some drill applications in, and we expect that process to happen whilst we're conducting this first phase. And because it's at surface, because it's visible, we're actually able to accelerate our exploration program. And the initial stages are really, it's very, very simple here. It's on boots on the ground, confirm the historic, it's graphitic, graphite, we know that from the drilling. Stage 2, define the area. Stage 3, we get drilling. And we're looking, as I say, we're looking to accelerate that very, very quickly. Our shareholders have been patient enough with us, and and they appreciate why. But the access within the Awkward area is exceptionally good. Within Canadian terms, we're circa at the closest point to the conductors. We're probably only about 2 kilometres from the historic Chrome Putty mine. And that gives us access directly onto the main road between Thunder Bay and Armstrong. And then you're talking about a high level A road that's 2.5 hours to the biggest port on Lake Superior. In Canadian terms, we are literally next door to a major port with very, very few issues in terms of logistics. We can just get on with this, which is an extraordinary statement within North America.
And I mean, is it going to be the focus then, Darren, going forward for the company, do you think?
We've got 2 focuses on the area. Now, the VMS potential on a bonga is very real. We've put 6 holes in at Wishbone. 5 holes at Wishbone, 1 hole at Survey. We've discovered 2 VMSs. We've got Ottertooth to go to next. We've got step out drilling for Wishbone and Survey, but they're in a different area to where this graphite is. So we've got two areas of attack within the business, both for discoveries that we've made, and that's where we go. But at the initial stages, it is all about the graphite. It's the low-hanging fruit for a junior explorer, and especially into the market, the sentiment, the sector, the development in North America of the supply chain is increasing all the time. We've got VW making in the process of building one of the biggest gigafactories in North America and across the whole entire eastern seaboard of the United States. That there are gigafactories either in planning, production, or indeed under construction as we speak. And North America, in the United States itself, it's got zero supply of graphite, and in Canada, the supply is tiny. It can be a little bit confusing, this what I'm going to say to people, but you've got one Northern Graphite. They've got the only solely producing graphite mine in North America. That's in Quebec. It's not huge tonnage at this point. They have scalability there, and that's the Lac Deals mine. And the only other production, and this is the chances of this would be very slim, is actually the Lac Deals mine in Ontario, and graphite's produced as a byproduct to their platinum, palladium, nickel from that mine. And again, it's very low numbers. The production reports indicate circa 5,000 tons of graphite is produced in Canada. So that's 5,000 tons in the entire North America in 2023. It's an outstanding opportunity. Everything is having to be imported. We've got the Ontario government looking to move towards a circular economy. And that's certainly what's happening in America as well. America is looking for supply from allies. As we've seen the macro environment over the last few years pretty much crumble in terms of this one-stop global economy. That's no longer going to happen. There are issues around China and Chinese supply. And of course, China absolutely dominate this market. And that actually, as a junior, that we've got the flexibility, and that provides us potentially with another opportunity should we prove up the graphite as per the historic numbers. Because you are going to need you're going to need production. You're going to need graphite processing in North America. All of that's happening in China. All the production in Africa, it goes to China, and the governments in the Western world, they're looking to ease away from that. And if you're going to do that and you're going to be successful in doing that, you need to have your own processing capabilities. But it's one stage at a time. But this is why we get on the ground. And once you're at surface, Mark, it becomes the exploration process becomes a lot easier and a lot more simple.
Okay, good. Well, I mean, it sounds very much like this. This is going to be very much a focus for Panther going forward. I mean, what about other? We're going to talk at the end when we have our round table about supplies and where it might come from for graphite and which nations need them and how the supplies might flow. But I mean, what are you seeing or on the ground or hearing on the ground in Canada there? Are there other opportunities for graphite? I know there's a lot of these camps you have over in Canada there, the Timmins camp, the Hemlo camp, they're big mining districts. Are we seeing more kind of interest in graphite generally in Canada?
Well, we were, I was approached in the middle of 2023 from the government of Ontario, and was told that should we ever find graphite or come across graphite, could we immediately let them know? And at that stage, we'd already had the 2.65 meter intercept assayed, and that looked relatively interesting. But as soon as we'd done the follow-up work on the entire intercept, we then followed that up, and there's been further discussions. And I know that the Ontario government are very keen to feed this kind of information all the way down to end users. And we've seen this within the critical mineral space, that end users are aware of the potential supply constraints that are coming up. They're aware of the strength of the Chinese position. They're aware that they need to find a locally sourced material. So they're extremely active in looking to attract companies that have potentially got these deposits, and that's exactly what we have got. And everything since we've made that further announcement on the intercept has been extremely positive. We had discussions at PDAC around it, and there's interest and there's a lot of confidence, and there's financing for this type of opportunity, and that financing is available from outside of the usual equity market sources, and that's certainly what we're going to be targeting. And as I've alluded to, that's the advantage of having this at surface and being able to go there and basically touch it, see it. It's an extraordinarily powerful moment for the business in terms of what we're seeing in historic, what we're seeing in our own results, and what we're hearing in terms of finance and the way that governments are looking to take this forward, and they're actively seeking us around that.
They're actively seeking you, really?
They are. Yeah.
Can you elaborate any more on that, Darren?
No. I just go back to the fact that they the Ontario government approached us before we had the discovery, and said that regarding any graphite, please let us know.
Okay.
And
right.
Having those discussions post that, it's
okay.
it has been extremely encouraging. And that if they are going to achieve their goal, which is a circular economy, they need graphite. If they need graphite, they know that they have to connect end users with the explorers that are looking. And we're the company at the moment that's leading the way in terms of discovery in Ontario.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Darren. I'm going to go to the questions from people, and I'm very pleased to say that there are over 330 people watching this. So I'm pleased that even though we're having issues with the YouTube feed this evening, that it's being picked up on presumably X and perhaps LinkedIn as well. As I say, because we're not on YouTube, the best way to probably get us questions is go on the StockBox Twitter page at StockBox Media and just reply on the live stream there. If you want to send an email, info@stockboxmedia.com. Or I believe, certainly with Panther and Marula, the Telegram groups are indeed watching, and we do have people keeping an eye on the groups, and I can see questions have come in, I think, from those groups. So I'm going to put them to you, Darren. I know you only want to stick to talk about the graphite tonight. There is a question that came in on Manitou, but let me get through the graphite questions. How big could this graphite play be if proven? Would Palm sell or farm out or develop?
As with everything, you can't pigeonhole yourself here. As a business, we would take every proposal on its own merits. The realities are, as a business, I'm looking to create the greatest amount of value per share that I can for our shareholders and for myself. And I would make a judgment at the time of any offer, and act accordingly. And it will be at the greatest point. There's no ego with this business. I'm just looking to generate returns, capital returns for shareholders. So you make a judgment on its own merits at the time that it comes forward.
Yeah, I know we've spoken before, Darren, and you don't get attached, do you, to a project?
No. Look, every project we've got and everything we do, it has its own job to do. I guess I would say. I think from a junior explorer perspective, in an ideal world, you would develop up a project area that got to an extent where it has a cash value, and then you use that capital to potentially develop your next project within the business to I would say to production. Okay. And then you can rinse and repeat that. My first task with Panther, Mark, is to get us to 20 to 30 million market cap. And I aim to do that now. This market's turned. I aim to do that as quick as I can. And there's a very good reason for that. Within London, within the investment circles, they want to see companies that have got that kind of valuation before they look to come in. But also, once you get to that stage, there's a huge amount of value out there within the junior sector, and I won't ignore those opportunities. At the moment, I have to steer clear of those opportunities because we haven't got the market cap to support that type of action. But this business has developed. We're going to become very aggressive. It's what I promised shareholders when we started. Sadly, we run into COVID. It's some excuses. I get that, but there's nothing we can do about COVID. We're good, but we're not quite that good. And then we've had this dreadful bear market for the last 2.5 years. And what we have done, though, we've shown the market that we believe we genuinely have a huge opportunity to create shareholder value. And we've done that by our actions, not our words. And that's the fact. We basically haven't issued a share since August of 2022. And that's taken some doing, and it's taken a lot of support from the board. We could have gone the easy route and diluted again and almost play around within the assets, but that would be doing our shareholders a disservice. I understand people have reasons for having to get out, and you have to give people a reason to get back in, and that's currently what we're doing. We're showing the market, and I would encourage people to maybe look at my Twitter feed. We're showing the market now that this graphite has a huge potential. Then you cannot get away from that. You've only got to look at the conductors. We know those conductors in certain areas are graphitic. We know the historic reports are graphitic. and it's now starting to educate the market that the VMS potential is also mammoth. I would say, the VMS, that's the big business. The graphite is a potential huge business on its own, and that's why I talk about potential production with graphite. So we're entrepreneurial, we're dynamic, and we've got to prove this. But my first step has to be to get us to those sort of levels, so that we can start to exploit some of the opportunities out there. And you know what? It'd be a crying shame if we don't get there in short order, because that will mean that the rest of everybody else has lifted. But no, it's now the time, and people will start to see the Panther show its teeth, I guess.
Okay.
Long answer, Mark. Apologies.
Yeah, long answer, but I mean, I like what you said, though. I mean, the market's turned, that people would be pleased to hear that. But also, you said you want to get Panther to a 20 to 30 million market cap. I mean, is that what you're sort of putting your stamp on? Is that what you sort of be judged on? I mean, I want to ask you for a timeline. I will ask you for a timeline. What would be what's your answer?
If I knew what was in the ground, then I could provide you with that answer. But we're very confident with the assets that we've got.
Okay.
I believe that and my heart of hearts, I believe that it could exceed that many times. But what I've never wanted to do was get to that market cap purely on dilution. I've said from day one, and I've stayed loyal to that I want to develop an explorer that has the ability to provide a return for the investors that got involved in Panther from day one. And in over 4 years, we still haven't doubled our shares in issue, whilst we have completely transformed our asset base. There isn't a single asset in the company that was in the company at the time of listing, and that takes some doing. But now we've got to prove it on a commercial level, in terms of those assets that we've brought in have a discovery, and I would like to think there's more than a discovery. But remember, you're looking at a 3 million market cap company that appeared on the highest graphite intercepts in the first quarter of 2024. If that doesn't show value, I don't know what does. You're looking at a company that's drilled 6 holes into 2 separate areas. 1 hole into survey, we discovered a VMS straight away. 5 holes into Wishbone, we discovered a VMS, and 4 previously undiscovered lenses. Any one of those lenses could hold a deposit. This is a company that has a remarkable track record for discoveries, with very limited drilling. Mm-hmm. Give me access to more drilling, and the sky is genuinely the limit. And I'm going on history, not on. This isn't CEO ramp by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying to people, look at what we've achieved with what we've had.
Okay, another question, Darren, I have here that came in, I think, again from Telegram. You mentioned about the government of Ontario's interest, but this question is specifically, what are the Ontario government's views on this graphite discovery? I mean, maybe you're not calling it a discovery yet.
No, look, it's too early for any kind of opinion on that. Okay. But I think that now we needed snow melt, right? Unfortunately, that intercept was tested circa the middle of October. I think we've got the results back now. Don't quote me on this. I think it's early December, possibly. And by then, you've got 2 foot snow on the ground. So you can't go back to it. And really, that's why we've held back. Now, something that was very significant, and we completed a deal between Christmas and New Year that was announced. And that was all in relation to this graphite. But what we've had to do, we've had to sit on the knowledge that we've gained, the knowledge that we've got. Because if I started talking about it in January and saying that we're looking to get on the ground conclusion of snowmelt, which is circa end of April, early May, people would have been bored of that story and they'd no longer be listening by now. So we've had to be patient. We've had to ask our shareholders to be patient. But the time is here and now. And as I say, when you're at the surface, when you've got drill permits in, when you know the exact locations you've got to go to, when you know the conductors are there, you know those conductors are graphitic. It's interesting, and the Ontario government are watching every single move. And trust me, we're taking governmental engagement exceptionally seriously. And you will understand more about that in short order.
Good.
And this company is being taken seriously by people that are engaged in that type of environment.
Okay.
And I go back again where we sit within the market. I think we're in a good place.
Well, it's good to hear that, Darren, and good to hear that you're taking it seriously. I do want to push on a bit because there are a couple more questions, and we're got about 4 minutes or so left with your.
I'll keep the answers short for you, Mark.
With your good. Well,
does anybody know? Actually, there's a lot of people watching. Does anybody know how Ipswich are getting on? Because I sacrificed Ipswich tonight for this.
Yes, Darren is not watching Ipswich to come on here, and so yeah, we're all blessed. There's 400 people watching, which is fantastic. I'm really pleased to see that. But let me get on with another question. You might be able to answer this very quickly. Can you say anything? Hang on, where was this question? Oh yeah, sorry. Why is the Palm market cap so low at 4 million with all this graphite potential?
Very simple. The market's waiting for a highly dilutive, massive raise. You can keep waiting.
Okay, great.
We're not feeding this market. Look at our trading. Anybody that understands trading patterns, Mark. Yesterday, prime example, £500 buys. Every time it ticked up. Market makers have got no stock. If you want to feed the market makers, they'll draw us down. But you want to put buys into it, you are going to drive this price higher. And try it. You know, that's just, okay. I'm just going on fact from yesterday. I've just watched it with my own eyes.
Okay. Another question here. Can you say anything about the awkward graphite quality from the historic studies? Is its variability across the licenses? No,
we don't know. That's a simple fact about it. We don't know. And actually, something that was touched on earlier on, very quickly, is flake as well. Look, you know, that's very important in the graphite market. But we've been extraordinarily lucky to get a really nice intercept when we was drilling an anomaly. We need to make sure that this graphite area is there as per historic reports. And then once we define that more, we can then look at the metallurgical work and just understanding more. But yeah, it's just too early. But it's big. It is a big area.
Right, okay. So, I mean, you say you're waiting, just a final thought perhaps, you're waiting for that snow melt to get on the ground. When could that be then? Are we talking sort of May time?
I get a report every Monday now directly from the Abonga area. We know people that are staying at Abonga. I got my report this Monday and their report was you're probably still looking at a few weeks. Because there's plenty of snow in the bush,
okay,
but they're expecting temperatures into double figures during the day at times this week. That will mean that the snow melt. You know, you could be looking at a couple of weeks. But as I say, we've got people up there every weekend. Okay. They're looking at the snow in the bush. As soon as that's done, we are literally in there. The team's waiting in Thunder Bay to go.
Okay, and how much confidence do you have in these historic reports? Or maybe a better question is how much work will be required to perhaps validate them?
Oh, very little. Okay. That's why we've got a team going in. So on the historic reports, these are geologists making these observations. And they are reports that are submitted. You need to submit. You've had to do this for forever in Ontario. You submit the reports. They are used against your claim commitments, and this was a material that no geologist was looking for, but they continually mention it in reports. If that's not significant, then we're not sure what is.
And I mean, how quickly would you get a sense of the viability then, Darren, once you sort of get on the ground? I mean, you talk about different phases. Will you get a sense at phase one?
You're going to get a sense of phase one about the overall scale.
Okay.
We know that we've got 5 kilometers. It's about a kilometer wide. These are free trends. For up north, it's a lot wider. It's a lot deeper. But when I say up north, it's probably a kilometer further north. This is like 2 kilometers deep, by a number of kilometers wide. We need to look there. There's actually some other stuff as well to the west, but it's just defining these initial areas. But then we're away. This is the thing, because this is at surface, so you're not playing the usual game of hide and seek that the commodities do. I was actually on a call that one of the geologists actually said within that call, said, well, it won't be at surface because it's soft and it gets eroded, and it's the rocks there are 2.5 billion years old. And I produced reports, and that caused the geologists to straighten their back. Actually, it was on a Zoom call, and they straightened their back, and if they found that very significant, the fact that the graphite is potentially at surface still, because that increases confidence in terms of the potential scale and size.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Darren, for your time. Someone has given me the score. It's 0-0, so I'll let you. You've got sort of half an hour now to catch up before we come back at the end, but thank you for now, Darren.
I appreciate somebody giving that information over, and I may just jump on my phone for a moment. So listen, enjoy Marula. They've done a great job. And actually, can I just say, actually, the first company on, I follow that story really closely, and it was great to hear what they're doing, where they're at, what they're doing, and Rio Tinto is a fantastic shareholder for them.
Indeed. Thank you, Darren. We'll catch you in about 30 minutes.
Thanks, Mark.
Well, yes, thank you, everyone. I'm just about to bring Jason Brewer on, our final guest. Again, I'll just reiterate, apparently I've been told there are problems with YouTube live streaming. It started, lo and behold, about 50 minutes ago, just when we wanted to go live. So thanks for Elon Musk and Twitter and LinkedIn for keeping us on the air this evening. Again, any questions? I know the Telegram groups are active. There's been some sent in. Please do keep sending them if that's the easiest way. We do have people looking at the Telegram groups, but also info@stockboxmedia.com if you want to send an email, or go onto our @StockBoxMedia Twitter page and just reply on the live stream there for your questions. But I'm very pleased there are 450 people or so watching live. Thank you all very much. And indeed, please do keep your questions coming in, because that is what we're here for tonight. And our final guest, Jason Brewer. Thank you very much, Jason, for joining us tonight from Marula Mining. How are you?
I'm good, Mark. Good to be on.
Good. Thank you very much, Jason. And of course, graphite focused. And interestingly enough, you had, of course, the news today, didn't you? This morning. I don't know if you do these things on purpose. Sometimes just to keep up the slick image that you always portray from Marula. But I mean, first of all, just introduce the project Nyori Nyori and really what your objectives are with this project.
Sure. Look, as you know, Marula Mining is battery metals focused, and one of the key battery metals that we are targeting is graphite. And through the Nyori Nyori and the Nyori Green graphite projects, we hold 25 granted mining licenses. 8 mining license applications are currently in, and there's a further prospecting license application. They extend over an area of about 550 hectares. Within what's considered a very highly prospective Mozambique belt, which is known for its world-class coarse flake graphite projects found in Mozambique, found in Tanzania. Obviously, we're located in Tanzania near Moshi and near Mount Kilimanjaro. And arguably, Tanzania is the fastest growing graphite producing region in the world. And it's host to a large number of world-class mining operations, mining projects, many of them which are held by ASX listed companies such as BlackRock, such as Echograph, such as Walkabout. And there's a number of AIM companies listed here. And of course, then there's us. And what we're focusing on is developing that Nyori Nyori and Nyori Green project area, which, as I said, is going to be about 37 granted mining licenses over the course of this quarter, all adjoining each other. So we've got quite a consolidated area in what we think is a very strategic location. Tanzania's main graphite mines, world-class graphite mines, are located either on the coast in the southeast of Tanzania or in the central region, which is where we're at. Within 25 kilometers of us, we've got 2 Chinese graphite plants being built as we speak. And we've got about half a dozen local Tanzanian operated small mining operations, some of which are already exporting that material as run-of-mine material into the Asian markets, into India and into China. Look, we're looking at building and accelerating the building of one of Tanzania's, call it premier focused mines. Not one that's going to be producing, huge volumes of natural graphite flake. No, far from it. We're focused on value. We're focused on the large, on the coarse, on the jumbo flakes, which we've seen and which our independent geologists have confirmed are widespread across that Nyori Green, Nyori project area. So we've recently announced results today, Mark, as you know. We sat there, we had a good discussion about them today. Those results, very high grade, broad mineralization, a lot of tonnage upside according to our independent geologists. And on that basis, and on the open strike length, on the basis of the very broad mineralization that we've seen, we're already planning the next phase of work, which is going to include diamond drilling, trenching. It's going to include mining studies, processing studies. We've got processing engineers already in place who have worked on graphite projects there in Madagascar, working on a major project in Tanzania at the moment. So we're really focused on building a graphite mine here. And, I've been focused on Tanzania for the best part of 10 years. And I've seen companies there from the ASX, from London, that have done very little over those 10 years. I want to achieve what they've done in the past 15 years. I want to achieve that in the next year. And we're very fortunate that we've got the backing of a very strong, financially robust investor behind us that allows us to push forward and do just that, Mark.
Okay. I guess then the ultimate ambition for the project is to get into that small scale mining operation and cash flow.
Yeah, I'd focus less on the small scale, Mark.
Initially small scale.
It's all about margin. It's all about economics. And when you look at the graphite flakes, which we've seen, when we look at some of the, call it the high level scoping study numbers that we've done, that some of our consultants that QGC have done, who are our major investor, backed by, self-made South African billionaire Quinton van der Berg, we will be in the lowest cost quartile. Our margins will be very robust and very significant. We will not be producing small, fine graphite flakes. We will be producing and targeting the production of large, coarse, jumbo flakes. And that's where the value is. So I would prefer us to be producing and targeting a production rate of 20,000 tons, of which between 40 and 60% will be in that area. And that will give us a very significant cash flow and something which we're targeting in the short term. Absolutely.
Okay. So you've got to be in the lowest cost quartile. I mean, what work do you have to do to prove that really and achieve that?
Look, we're very fortunate, as today's announcement demonstrated. I mean, we've got some very high grade mineralization there at surface, extending over a number of kilometers and with strike that remains open, and then it goes down undercover. We need to look at the scalability of it. As I said, you've already got 2 Chinese plants being built and being fed by a number of relatively small, medium scale operations in and around us. On adjoining licenses to us, there's a Tanzanian company called Kilimanjaro. They're aptly named, obviously, because you can see Kilimanjaro from the license area. But they're mining and they're selling run-of-mine material to traders that go straight into the Indian market. For us, we need to demonstrate very quickly the scalability of this. That's what we need to demonstrate.
Okay.
And we go there, you can see open pits, you can see that mineralization, you can touch it. And I was there, 12 months ago when we had just 10 mining licenses. Over the course of this quarter, with the new license applications being granted, we would have increased that by 3.5 times. There's a reason we've done that. Strategically, we think this region, this central region in Tanzania, is going to be a very significant producer of very high quality, large, coarse flake material.
Okay. And you say you have to quickly demonstrate that scalability there. So, I mean, what comes next? How do you start to demonstrate that scalability, Jason? And I know from, of course, the past talking to you at Marula with the other projects as well, it seems very much you don't stick around. And of course, you know, Quinten van der Berg as well, who I met in London, don't want to hang around, want to get moving.
No, look, he's a miner. He's operating 12 coal mines in South Africa, in probably one of the most challenging environments for coal mining. He wants to be mining lithium, which we're doing obviously in the Northern Cape. He wants to be mining copper, which we're going to be doing in Tanzania too. He wants us to be his major graphite producer, where he's got a very large shareholding. So he's got mining teams, he's got processing teams, he's got a number of very close relationships with big equipment manufacturers that we've benefited from already at our other mining operation. No, he would like to see us, and he is supporting us to get this into production very quickly. So, you know, we will be putting in place with Erudite, who are the mineral processing consultants. We will be putting in place literally later this month, when I'm down in South Africa, the next phase of work on the processing and mining, in parallel with a major diamond drilling program, which we anticipate will really start to demonstrate the size of this this graphite deposit at Nyori Green and Nyori Nyori. Excellent.
Well, that's good to hear. And I mean, are you planning to sort of replicate that model there that you are following on Blesberg?
Yeah, if a model means getting into production quickly, looking at getting a very reputable offtake arrangement in place, looking at fast tracking the delivery of mining and processing equipment, absolutely. That's what we're looking at doing. And yeah, it's a model which I think the market is demanding of these days. I don't think the market is too supportive of exploration, greenfield, early stage exploration. They want to see a company that's got a clear strategy of bringing mines into production, and into production in a smart way. You know, gone are the days of, and if there's any CEOs or managing directors out there thinking of doing heavily dilutive equity raisings, then go, because your shareholders don't want to see that. They do not want to see that. They want to see you use your brains, use your project, leverage off your project to bring in funding from other strategic areas. And let's face it, at the moment, the commodities that we're in, graphite in particular, if you cannot be smart enough to do a financing that brings in some of the North American, some of the European government agencies, if you're not smart enough to bring in offtake groups out of Korea, out of the UK, out of China, then you're not doing your job properly as a mining executive. You know, there's many ways to develop projects, and you cannot just keep tapping out the equity markets. It's the wrong way of doing it.
Well, people will be very pleased to hear that. Of course, Darren's saying a similar thing as well. So I'm glad you kind of also said the same thing here. How quickly would you want to get into some form of production at Nyori Nyori in a, well, I want to say ideal world, but maybe I should say realistic world?
Look, realistically, I mean, I look at our neighbors next door who are, a Tanzanian company. They're mining, they're using, secondhand, poorly maintained equipment, and they're selling graphite run of mine without any processing, and they're receiving several $1,000s per ton for that material, and their cost would be a fraction. So their margins are 60, 70, 80%. When I look at them, I think I look at that and I say, okay, with the right equipment, with the right mine planning, with the right processing, what can be done? How can we work with local partners like we do at Nyori 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 Green, with Tequila Mining and Nyori Green Mining? How can we come in and bring that capital? Well, we've got a very strong partner that can do that. Our strategy is to have equipment on site, activities proceeding by the end of this year.
By the end of this year. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you, Jason. I'm sure there'll be plenty of news flow as we go towards the end of the year. What would be the key things you need to be getting? What milestones would you be trying to get achieved before the end of the year?
A major resource announcement.
Okay.
The results of the study by Erudite, by our mining consultants in South Africa. Key economic numbers on that. Numbers which support what I'm saying. Numbers independently verified that will say lowest cost quartile, margins of X. The confirmation on the flake size. Already, we're able to see it in our neighbours' production, and it's well established in that region. Our independent geological consultants observed it throughout their work when they were on site in November and December. We need that confirmed. We need those metallurgical characteristics set out on the graphite qualities. And we need to put out the exact CapEx to do this. With the CapEx, we're very fortunate that our major shareholder, Quinton van der Berg, who obviously you met, Mark, he's just raised $1 billion in a energy transition fund. And the first half of that is due over the course of this quarter. That is primarily earmarked to go into developing the company's projects that he's involved with, but very much focused on the processing side of things, the processing plants. So that's where we will be able to accelerate things, because we have that availability of, call it capital, through that fund, through that related entity. So, we're not like many juniors that have to kind of get to the point by, driving around the roundabout half a dozen times or going on a bit of a detour, because they've got to make announcements that can justify them raising that next phase of money, next phase of capital. We can actually just go in a straight line. And when you go in a straight line, you tend to go a little bit faster. So with the support and the confidence of having that funding behind us, that means we can actually just focus on what's right for the project and not necessarily what's right for the equity markets or for where you're going to source your next part of funding. So I'd like to say it's a much easier job sitting here, but it's not, obviously. But we're able to move forward with a bit more confidence.
Okay. Now, I want to go to the questions that are coming in, and if you come in from Telegram. I mean, the first one here, I think you've already answered it with, of course, that 1 billion fund that Quinton raised recently. But will that fund be used at project level to build a graphite plant?
That is what is proposed and under discussion, and what we will be pushing over this quarter and next. Yes. Okay.
And have you had any interest or discussions with off-takers at the moment?
We have at the mining Indaba back in February. It was a lot of the focus was clearly on our lithium mine up there at Blesberg, and we accelerated our discussions there on offtake. But on the graphite, you've got a number of Asian groups here in Tanzania that have already secured some offtake arrangements. They're trying to diversify their risk and have other offtake arrangements with developing companies such as us. So we've had that. The British government are huge here in Kenya, in East Africa. Their critical metals policy is continuing to evolve. So we're in discussions there, and those discussions, I believe, will intensify. There was a reason we did our offtake on our lithium mark with a British company, because that has positive impacts elsewhere within the business. So we've got to think strategically, and the interest that we're receiving out of Europe and out of Asia certainly assists us as we move forward. Yes.
Okay, good to hear. Another question that came in here, Jason, how will you educate the New York Stock Exchange and the Johannesburg Stock Exchange on the graphite investment case?
I hope I don't have to deal with the New York Stock Exchange. I hope I'm just going to be dealing with the Nairobi Exchange at the moment, Mark. But no, if it's an education process, people follow value. Graphite in Africa, Africa's got some of the highest grade, largest tonnage graphite deposits in the world. No question about that. A lot of them in East and Southern Africa. In East Africa here, East Africa's renowned for some of its gemstones. In Tanzania, you've got the Savarite. In Kenya, you've got the Savarite. You've got some amazing gemstones here, and most of them are hosted in graphite. So people know graphite. They now need to understand that it's got such value. You know, in Kenya, for instance, back in the 60s, there was a graphite mine operating here in Kenya. Run of mine grades 12 to 14%, which would make it one of the highest grade mining operations in the world now. That mine's effectively been lost. It's disappeared. It's covered in growth now from secondary forests and so on. I went to look at that. We found that operation, the old pits and tailings dump the other day. People know graphite. People know graphite. The way we will educate them is by monetizing it, getting production, getting earnings, and showing how a mining company can generate profits relatively quickly.
Thank you. Of course, you are right. It's the Nairobi Stock Exchange. I read NSE and thought New York. But
no, we've got no plan to go to the New York Stock Exchange yet, Mark. Please, I think three exchanges is more than enough for a junior company.
Indeed, yeah. You were looking to move over to AIM, weren't you, as well, at some point?
We're not going to move to AIM. Our primary exchange is going to be the main board. So we've got a bit of work to do there with the prospectus. I know this is one of the questions that may have come in there, Mark. When are we moving our primary exchange to the standard list of the London Stock Exchange? As soon as possible. As soon as possible. Competent persons report finalised. MSA have done a fantastic job there. The legal due diligence report, ENS likewise have done a great report there. They've had to do a few iterations because we've brought in a few projects over the past couple of months. So that's quite good. The working capital report, I think that's 99.9% completed by Safries and by Arana, who have been helping them. So that's really good. And Ken is our advisor on Aquis, and Memory Crystal, fantastic law firm based there in London, headed up by Nick Davies. Nick, if you're watching this, you've done a great job. A bit expensive, so just trim your rates down a bit. But they've done such a great job in getting that there. So that prospectus should be lodged with the FCA, if not by the end of this month, then certainly early in May.
Early in May. Okay, thank you, Jason. So another couple of questions, I think, here. Are South Korean companies active in Tanzania looking for graphite offtake deals?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And we had the pleasure of meeting one of them in Indaba.
Okay. I mean, can you elaborate any more on discussions or not at the minute?
They've already, the company we speak that's there, they've already got an existing offtake arrangement with one of the developers in Tanzania already, and they're trying to diversify their supply. They're trying to manage their risk. They don't want to be fully dependent on the feedstock to their battery plants back in Korea, in Seoul, I think it is, being solely dependent upon one African producer. There's still this perception that operating a mine in Africa is high risk and is unreliable. I dispute that many times, but yes, we're having discussions with a number of groups in particular there that have already locked down one source of supply. Clearly, they're looking at growing their business. We know just how big graphite demand is set to grow over the next 5-10 years. It is the most critical of critical metals in lithium-ion batteries on the anode side of that battery. So, people are strategically looking at projects, and there is an opportunity for companies at that end of the business to secure long-term arrangements with new projects here in Africa very readily.
Okay. Well, I think we've got just a couple of questions. If anyone else has any questions, do drop them in on that Marula Telegram group or over on Twitter, and we'll pick them up. But what is your short-term plan to get the market to properly value Marula's progress in graphite, but copper, manganese, and the lithium projects as well?
It's pretty evident. Look, the market wants to see production. They want to see cash flow. And I'm not blinded to that. So we need to be delivering into our offtake agreement at Blesberg on the lithium. There's going to be other offtakes and sale and purchase agreements there at Blesberg on the coltan, on the tantalum production, on the feldspar, on the mica, and even on the quartz, which is used obviously in solar panels. So we need to demonstrate, certainly from the lithium side, that we're actually making money from that operation. Likewise, here in Kenya, we've just got involved in a manganese operation. We need to make the first sales there. We've got an agreement to deliver 2,000 tons, and as part of an initial trial shipment, 2,000 tons with a view that we're going to be producing monthly between 5 and 10. So we've already got tons in the yard here in Nairobi, going through final sampling and checks. And we've got some repair work, some refurbishment work to do at the mine up in Samburu, where I was on Monday. And with those repairs done, then we'll start delivering more material down to Nairobi and through to the port and generating cash flow. We need to do the same at Kanusi on the copper and at Nyori over the course of this year. So value will come when shareholders feel that the risk is properly eliminated and they can see true value. And look, I'm unashamedly biased as hell. I think we're massively undervalued. Quinton does as well. But we need, it's an education process. We need to make it even clearer to people. And the only way to do that is show the dollars. Mark, show the dollars. I want to be selling this month. There's tantalum, there's coltan material bagged at Blesberg, ready for sale.
Really?
We've got Fujax, their logistics guys, up on site tomorrow. Their coltan trading group are up on Friday. They're taking samples. Those samples actually need to go back to the UK there for final analysis. That material will then be, they will make the provisional payment to us on that within 2 weeks, I think it's going to take to do the analysis. So, 2 tons doesn't sound too much, but that's like $250,000. So, and we've got another 7 sitting outside the core shed. So, this is just the byproduct of the mine. This is a lithium mine. You've got the byproduct material there on the tantalum, which again, we've got to sell. You've got feldspar again, which is actually, I think it's worth, latest pricing in South Africa is about $458 a ton. And I think the sales of feldspar is going to be as equal in revenue terms as what we've got for the lithium at the moment, just given where the lithium prices have obviously come, spodumene prices have come right off. So the sales of our byproduct materials are going to really create value for Marula. But investors need to see that. They want to know this quarter, this month, we sold this much, we received this much. That's what I have to do.
It is what you have to do, and I think validating that model with that first sale there from the lithium at Blesberg, I know this is graphite focused, but that's what I'm looking forward to seeing. Well, next month, Jason. So I hope you don't disappoint. A couple of good. Another question here. This says community engagement plans. What are your plans for community engagement? I know you're very big with the charity as well.
Yeah, look, with the community engagement here is huge. It's such an integral part of operating, and whether that's in Africa or in Europe, it's your social license to operate, and it requires proper engagement. You've actually got to get out there. You've got to meet and sit down and deal face to face with people. You can't do it out of some fancy ivory tower in London or New York or freaking Sydney. You've actually got to get out and meet with the communities that are affected by your operation. And that is something I think I pride ourselves here at Marula on what we do. And it's not just here in Kenya, in Tanzania, it's down there in South Africa. So the work that Henk van Zyl, that Martin Westerman in South Africa are doing, second to none. What they've done in terms of engaging with those communities in and around Blesberg and the structures they're putting in place, absolutely. What we're doing up in Tanzania, Edward Raheni, our general manager for East Africa, absolutely amazing guy. He's been out there, he's met with the communities in Dodoma, at Nyori, and he was with me in Samburu here in Kenya on Monday. And it's such an experience, and you've got to recognize that everybody has to benefit from this operation. And that is something, and with their support, you can achieve so much. And it's not just words. That's the favorite part of my job, Mark. It's not sitting here talking to you, because I talk to you so much each and every week. It's actually getting out there in the communities and showing them how we can work effectively with them. We came back on Monday with so much ideas in our head. We knew exactly what we had to do to make Samburu a success. We've got so many communities that are affected by it, surround that operation. And, I've got a new Samburu name over there. So, I've got to deliver. And that's why I go to these things, because people don't want to be dealing with a lieutenant, corporal or whatever. They want to be dealing with the CEO. They want to be dealing with the person that makes the decisions. And that's what I love about the job, getting out there and doing that.
Okay, good. I'm going to ask you one final question, Jason, then we're on time for the roundtable, where we'll bring back Sapan and Darren to discuss all things graphite. But the question is, and I think it might be on a few people's mind, is, of course, you have a lot of companies you're involved in, a lot of projects here. Do you need to strengthen the team here with management strength, but also experience strength?
Absolutely. We do that. We're constantly looking at that. I want to surround myself with people far smarter than me. I'm one of the first people to recognize shortcomings. I'm one of the first people to recognize where we need to strengthen things. We have spent the past 2 weeks going through an interview process here in Kenya for a new mine manager for the manganese operation. I think we've got the interviews tomorrow, Thursday. The final interview's got a short list, I think, of about 3 or 4 people. We've got to constantly evolve, Mark. It's in South Africa. We've strengthened the executive management team there. Jana, who's come in, great experience on the copper side, is working there as one of our general managers at Blesberg here in Kenya, Tanzania. One of the things we're looking at doing, we had some very good discussions recently with one of my non-executive directors here, Hannah Wangombi, is actually build a advisory board with basically between that exec management team and the board, made up of some very experienced local skilled people out of Tanzania, out of Zimbabwe, out of South Africa, people that have, we've been talking about ex-mines ministers, we've been talking about, senior judges, senior finance people, people who we think can add another dimension to what we're going to be achieving in the coming months.
Okay, good. One very quick, and if you could answer quickly, because it just popped up. When do you hope to have the other listings complete?
This quarter. NSE, if that's not done within 2 weeks, again, I've given somebody a stick to beat me with now. In South Africa, we've just got the appointment of local share registrars. And then obviously, I think we're talking about the main London listing too.
Yes, we have. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Jason. So I will bring back everybody else from earlier on. So let's bring back Sapan here from Sovereign Metals. And Darren Hazelwood, there we go. Welcome back, gentlemen. Thank you all for coming back to the end here. This is where we take a bit of a question time style and have a bit of a debate. Well, not a debate, more of a discussion around the common theme, which is graphite. So I'll pose a bit of a question, and then we'll see, get some discussion going, hopefully. Where do you anticipate the demand heading and thus pricing for graphite, and what advantages do each of the countries that each of you are operating in sort of uniquely have for your project? So Sapan, you've been probably waiting along. I'll give you the starter, since you also have that big bullish statement as well that you're going to be a world leader. So tell the guys why you're a world leader.
Yeah, look, so in terms of demand for graphite, obviously since 2022, about 50% of graphite that's produced now ends up in the lithium-ion battery space. and therefore electric vehicles. There has been a downturn in electric vehicle sales, but I mean, let's see where we came from, right? We're talking about a 37% increase in electric vehicle sales year on year, 22 to 23. I mean, we were selling about 1 million electric vehicles in 21, and it's about 2 million in 2023. So a small decrease in the growth is not going to be massively impactful. And look, whether it's I said before, whether it's consumers not biting the bullet and getting themselves into, the newest Tesla or BYD or whatever they may want, the reality is it's the policymakers and it's the regulation that's going to drive us towards this net zero factor, towards decarbonisation. You see all the big blue chips talking about decarbonising their own supply chains already. And it used to be a nice to have. It used to be one of those throwaway comments, we would like the lowest carbon supply chain and therefore the lowest carbon product. But you're seeing now, in the EU, for example, if you're a specific industrial, and when I say specific industrial, it's probably about 10,000 companies operating within the EU who now have to look into the carbon border adjustment mechanism. What that essentially is you're paying for every extra ton of CO2 emissions that your supply chain is producing elsewhere in the world to bring that product into Europe. So everything from your battery to your wing mirror to your wiper, if you're a BMW, for example, is going to get carbon accounted. You're going to understand the actual carbon footprint of that. And it's going to hit your bottom line ultimately. And look, the EU always seems to move the fastest in these policies. And then slowly you start seeing uptake in other areas, other regions. And dare I say, the US is probably the slowest on the uptake on these. But even the SEC is making comments around carbon border adjustment mechanisms now and carbon taxes. So whatever we think about the world of the electric vehicle and decarbonisation, I mean, look, batteries are here to stay. That graphite demand is there. What's happening today? Joe Biden, he's called around the Japanese Prime Minister for dinner. Right? What do you think they're discussing? They're discussing ways of essentially stopping the economic coercion, as they call it, of the Chinese, of Russians, of areas that have, or we've allowed to produce these critical minerals like graphite for years, for decades, and been absolutely, sitting by the sidelines while they control those supply chains. And now all of a sudden we've woken up and we've started to worry, well, where is this critical supply coming from? We use the term critical minerals. I mean, what does it mean? It means economically it's highly important, and supply, there's not enough of it. Right, those are your two factors for criticality, and that absolutely applies in the graphite space. Graphite itself hasn't seen the limelight the way the lithiums and the cobalts have, and the nickels have, probably because it's called a lithium-ion battery, even though the graphite is 50% of its volume. But I think it's to come, and we saw a little inkling of that when China decided to curb exports of graphite, and we saw a little bit of an uptick in the price of graphite, and the worries coming from the OEMs, whether it's Hyundai or Nissan, some of the guys in the US making a bit of noise about, well, where are we going to get our graphite from if China continues these export curbs?
And in terms of Malawi, then, what advantages do you think Malawi has as a global player in the supply of this? Whether it's east or west, because we know the Chinese have quite a stronghold on a lot of African projects.
Yeah, Malawi is a bit different. You don't see much of the Chinese influence in Malawi. Malawi's it's a Commonwealth. It's a member of the Commonwealth. Someone termed it the other day as a future critical minerals powerhouse, and that's really what it's starting to become. People are there looking at uranium, rare earths, lithium. We're obviously there with the rutile, with the graphite. You're seeing a big uptick in the exploration activities within Malawi. Why are you seeing that, and what makes us quite comfortable operating there and knowing that we can ultimately produce and essentially sell our products is, Malawi's got this plan. It's called Malawi 2063, and it's all about how does Malawi stop being dependent upon foreign aid as much as it is right now and become self-sufficient. And they've targeted 3 specific industries for that. Agriculture, Malawi, there's a lot of tobacco, grains, macadamia nuts. A lot of those farms in Malawi. Tourism is the second pillar. If you ever get a chance, please go visit Lake Malawi. It is stunning. And the third is mining. Right, because they understand what the mineral endowment of that country actually is. They've just never been able to tap it. They've never had the expertise. They've never had the experienced guys like ourselves come along and actually explore, which is why, we tripped over one of the biggest titanium and graphite finds ever on planet Earth. It was a very serendipitous find in that context. But look, even the president, he made a State of Nation address in February, and he brought up Kasia, and he said, look, Kasia is a game changer, not only economically, but geopolitically for Malawi. They're fully on board to get this thing built yesterday.
Okay. Well, thank you, Sapan. Darren, let me come to you for your thoughts on, first of all, where the demand and the pricing for graphite is heading. But secondly, what does sort of Ontario, Canada have that's advantageous? I assume they're not going to be exporting. They're going to be keeping it all in the country.
Yeah, it really is quite simple. The United States of America has 0 graphite supply. Canada production in 2023 was approximately 5,000 tons. And as Sapan mentioned, carbon accounted. And I love that phrase. You've got 5,000 tons approximately produced in Canada. Yet you've got one of the broadest expanses of gigafactories either being built in production or in planning phase down the whole eastern side of America and reaching up into Ontario and in the wider Toronto area. I think it's only going one way in terms of a sensible graphite deposit in Canada. It is going to have people purring for all the obvious reasons and for the reasons that Sapan just alluded to.
Okay. Jason, are you seeing any similar sort of signs over in Tanzania there from Malawi 2063 sort of similarity?
I think you're seeing it throughout all of East Africa, to tell you the truth. And I think East Africa is going to be emerging as, one of the major producing graphite regions in the world. So you've got Uganda, you've got Tanzania, you've got Malawi. And I've been on the ground there at Sovereign's projects several years ago. I spent 2 years in Malawi. Amazing country, and a government which is so proactive in terms of getting its dependency away from aid, and the resources is clearly a way forward there. But no, East Africa is poised to fill part of that void. I think you've got UBS, Macquarie, Benchmark Intelligence. They're all saying demand is going up multiple times over the next 10 years. 100 new mines, 100 new graphite mines over the period to 2035. Each one producing over 50,000 tons per annum is needed to meet the sort of demand which they're forecasting. Those mines aren't going to, unfortunately, a lot of those mines aren't going to be able to get developed in the Western world during that period of time. First and foremost, because the deposits just aren't there. The other side is you've actually got more conducive investment conditions here in East Africa to build those mines. And I think that's where East Africa, Tanzania in particular, will emerge as a major producer of graphite, and one that's going to be supplying those gigawatt factories that you talk about there in the US. I mean, let's be fair. Unfortunately, a lot of the graphite, a lot of those critical metals are leaving Africa unprocessed without the value added and going into factories, be they in Europe or North America.
Darren, I want to just pick on a point Jason said there, and I want to see what your reaction is on when he says that the Western nations are not going to do it as quick. Do you have a rebuttal to that comment?
I think if you look, and Jason isn't wrong, but if you look at it today, the average time to get a mine in production in North America is not acceptable. However, there are definitely moves afoot to reduce that timeline, to reduce those timelines, as it's no different in North America to what we're seeing in, the guys have alluded to, in Africa, in terms of governments coming to the table. You can't have things like the DOE, the Department of Energy in America, moving capital into these businesses. The IRA funding in America, you've got the OPEC in Ontario and the Ontario government. You can't have all these institutions funding an industry and funding discoveries and then having extended timelines to getting them into production. And there are moves afoot, certainly in Canada, to reduce those timelines substantially for any deposit. Around that, all of the same engagement has to happen, and absolutely rightly so. But I think you're only going to see these timelines come down substantially, and that's due to a recognition that there is major undersupply in the market and in the graphite market. Some of the numbers you see just out to 2030 are quite extraordinary, and we've seen the geopolitical moves globally. They haven't been positive for a global economy. So we've seen a divide happen, and Western governments recognise that we need our own source of supply. And to get that own source of supply, these industries have been decimated in the West. And to bring our own source of supply online, they have to start doing it now. They have to reduce timelines. They have to increase the pace of permitting. And all those things are going to happen simply because they have to.
Well, let's hope that something comes out of that meeting. I know it's in the United States, but with the Japanese Prime Minister there having his dinner with Joe Biden. But I want to move on and talk about ESG, that's environmental and social governance, and pose the question of how much of an industry concern is ESG and supply flow for graphite, and in what ways can you as the operators address these concerns throughout the entire supply chain from extraction to end use? There's different things here. Canada's probably not going to have a big footprint on transportation, but of course they have to consider the First Nations. African operators probably have to consider a lot of the footprint when it comes to transportation. So Jason, let me come to you first on that. I mean, how much of a concern is ESG, and what are you doing as an operator to mitigate the concerns? Look,
I think ESG is critical as a business, as a listed entity. We as a group are going through an audit process at the moment with a party out of the UK, Verify, who's auditing our policies, our procedures, how we conduct ourselves in the various communities. That's been going on for the past 6 months. And, for a junior company of our size to engage in such a process, I think that demonstrates the importance of it. I've said it before, if here we are, and this is just using our Blesberg lithium mine as an example. Sorry, I'm talking lithium and not graphite. If there we are producing lithium in South Africa and it's powered by, Eskom's coal-fired power stations, it's not a good look. So that's just one part of it. But the whole ESG, we need to be able to demonstrate to our shareholder base, but also to the increasing number of ESG focused funds, ethical focused funds that are putting in considerable capital into this space. And we need to demonstrate from the very start of how we engage and how we conduct our businesses that we are conducting ourselves at tier 1 levels. And that's the pressures that are put now on junior companies, on emerging companies. And it is, we've got three, we're a junior company and we've got 3 people focused on ESG and community initiatives. And that's from the senior team. That's 20% of our senior people focused on that. And that doesn't include me. And I love that sector. So it's something which we have to engage with, not provide lip service to. We actually have to get out there and do it and demonstrate it. And that means doing things in a much different way to how the mining industry has operated before. Sustainability and so on. Working with those groups that want to see that the footprint that we make on the immediate communities and on the global scale is managed, is mitigated, and is controlled. So, going forward, especially being a London-listed company, the pressures you get there, the reporting that we're going to have to put there, requires a lot of resources to be put to it. But rightly so. If you're playing in this space, in that graphite space, if you're producing a commodity that is going into strategic institutions in North America, in Europe, you've got to be able to demonstrate that you're meeting all those criteria. We were just talking, just a step back there. You're talking about how the North American has got all this funding available to go into these critical metals. They're funding a feasibility study for a graphite project in Uganda at the moment. With Blancow, headed up by Mike Ralston, a good friend of mine from back in Perth. You've managed to get government funding out of the US to fund a project in Uganda. Now, they've had to go, and I know the work that Mike's done there, they've had to go through some tremendous work there to demonstrate how they're managing with it and how they're implementing all their ESG policies, procedures, and so on. It's a critical thing going forward, Mark, and it's not going to subside. If anything, it's going to get more intense, and the focus and attention is going to continue to increase.
Okay, well, thank you, Jason. Sapan, let me come to you on this. I assume, with Rio being involved, it's high up on the agenda.
Yeah, look, absolutely. There are some things that fall by the wayside when you're a junior exploration company looking for the next big find in deepest, darkest Africa. But when you have a partner like Rio Tinto, I mean, all of those nice to haves become absolute imperatives. Look, talking about ESG, you've got to really flip it on its head and look at it as almost GSE, right? If you don't have the governance, you're not going to get the S&E right in the first place. And as a listed entity, you need to have that governance right, and we do have that oversight. We're ASX and AIM listed, so we've got many eyes on us, notwithstanding Rio Tinto as well in the room, ensuring that we don't do anything that would put their nose out of joint. On the social side, I think everyone would agree. If you don't have, you need 2 things socially. You need in order to, do business in a host country. You need to have governmental support, which I talked about, and you need local community support. And that local community support, we've been doing acting on initiatives from education, health, community liaison for the best part of 5-6 years. Without plugging, I mean, we're expecting an RNS in the next few days on a conservation farming program that we initiated a few months ago. Malawi and a lot of Southern Africa is facing a bit of a drought at the moment because of El Nino, and so crop yields aren't what they were. We're hoping that we are training up local farmers and farmers who will be essentially on the project land to to get more fruitful bounties of their harvests, essentially, and bootstrap them out of malnutrition and poverty and all these problems that unfortunately Africa has faced for way too long. And as good corporate citizens, it's our duty to be as helpful as possible in all those factors, because it's a two-way relationship on the social side. Now, environmentally, I mean, graphite is a prime example of how, we talk about ESG at the consumer end. We're all buying electric vehicles because we all want to save the planet. The electric vehicle runs off a lithium-ion battery. 40% to 50% of the lithium-ion battery is graphite. Most of the graphite in your lithium-ion batteries today is a synthetic graphite. It's not the natural stuff that we all are looking to produce. Some of it is, but the vast majority of it is synthetic. That synthetic graphite is a byproduct of the petrochemical industry. So essentially, we're using the petrochemical industry to produce the lithium-ion batteries today that end up in our electric vehicles. It's completely counterintuitive. So one of the first things we did at Sovereign was to go, what's the carbon footprint of getting that synthetic stuff in a vehicle, and then what is the carbon footprint of getting our graphite at Cassia out of the ground and on a ship, ready to be sent to an anode manufacturer. And the difference is huge. We're talking about a 99% decrease in the carbon footprint. For every ton of synthetic graphite that ends up in the lithium-ion battery space, you've got to put 20 tons of CO2 emissions up the chimney stack. For every ton of graphite that comes out of Cassia, you're putting 0.2 tons of CO2 emissions into the atmosphere. So there, right away, you're seeing, that environmentally, if we're talking ESG, I mean, if you're extracting graphite in a half decent way, you're probably doing well for the E within the ESG already.
Wow, I mean, that's amazing. I'm so glad that's new to my ears this evening. That's quite incredible. Darren, I'll give you the final thought on this from Panther's point of view and the ESG element.
Yeah, I would probably have a more simplistic view of ESG. I think it ultimately boils down to the people and the individuals involved. It's very easy, just purely by how ESG is framed, to lose sight of what it's actually about. And it's great to hear the guys talk about engaging with people on the ground. That's what you're doing, because you've got to turn this round. And if somebody was coming within your local community or your local area, your local wider area, and looking to effectively stick holes in the ground or create holes, what would be your response? How would you react? What would you expect? So you have to turn that round as a corporate to make sure that you're not just putting sound bites around ESG, environmental, social. It is a case of making sure that you are treating people how you would like to be treated, and actually showing that by your actions. And that's how I will and how I have taken Panther forward on this, and that's how I'll continue to. I think it's either within you or it's not. But it's certainly easy to create the sound bites, and that it's about your overall actions, and that is Panther. We are aware of our social responsibilities. We're aware of the benefits of what we potentially do to the wider communities and to the countries and globally in terms of bringing down carbon emissions. But I would always act in a way that I would want to be treated, and that would be reflected in Panther and in our actions.
Okay.
Simple for me.
Well, thank you all for joining us this evening for our graphite special. The first time we've done a graphite focus. It's, as you say, it's not perhaps one of the sexy commodities, but when you think about it, and some of the facts that Sapan gave tonight, 40 to 50% of a battery, a lithium-ion battery, is indeed graphite. I mean, maybe it will become one of the more sexy. Sorry, Darren, did you want to?
Yeah, I just want to jump in there, just congratulate Sapan and Jason on what they've done. I met Jason a couple of years ago in London. He bought me lunch. I'm
waiting for you to pay me back on that one.
No, that's why I've avoided London for the last 2 years, in case there's a Jason Brewer repay. And Sapan, what the company done, I'm following your story very closely. That's a fantastic deposit. And it really is a pleasure to have that in London. But both of you, you're both at different stages, different types of development, but you're both a credit to London and to London markets.
Thanks, mate.
That's it.
Yeah, thanks. Look, I think I'm probably speaking for all of us when I'm saying, we've all said that the markets are a little bit bearish, they're a little bit broken. We can all point fingers here and there. The reality is there's too much money chasing too few good projects. And that money's just been sat by the wayside. And I think what you're going to see is that money will start flowing in, and it will start picking up for critical minerals, the likes of your graphites, your lithiums, etc. And we're all hopeful that sooner rather than later, but it's almost a given that that's going to happen at some point in time.
Excellent. Well, thank you all very much for joining us this evening, and thank you everyone watching for bearing with us on the technical issues there with YouTube. But we've had a good response. We had 700 people watching this live, and thank goodness for the other platforms, and we've got lots of questions answered. So thank you, Sapan from Sovereign Metals, Darren from Panther Metals, and Jason from Marula Mining, and of course everyone watching. And until next time from StockBox, have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks. See you soon, Darren. Lunch on me.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter, and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.